Then they were gonna put a golf course up there. They changed their mind. Now you wanna come around with a gravel bank. I don't believe it. I don't go for it, not one bit. Our property's gonna go downhill. You may pollute our wells. Thank you.
Thank you. Yep.
Hello, my name is Norman Hawes. I live on Oak Drive, and I live 200 feet from where he's gonna haul his gravel to get processed. And in the summertime, my vehicles are so loaded with dust from these gravel beds. It's unbelievable, really. And we have notified the town hall and the state of Connecticut, many a time. But there's one thing, is there is aquifers underneath these gravel beds. And how much gravel can you take off the top of these aquifers before they stop filtering the water? And that is where all the water that feeds this town comes from. And it fills these big tanks here. And they come right from there because the aquifers run down the railroad tracks, out in the fields where there's wetlands. So what happens if one of these rigs that is excavating this gravel breaks a fuel tank and the fuel goes into the ground? And how can I say, it paralyzes all the water for the town, not only because these aquifers are in, and they are, because this isn't the first time that I've been here talking against the gravel bed, And, okay, we need gravel, but we should control it a lot better. For the simple reason is from where they're gonna put their gravel bank in, if you go across the road a little ways, Rawson has a monstrosity gravel bank. You come across, these people are gonna put in an extended gravel bank. And if you come down, Rawson is right behind my house on Oak Drive. And it is a nuisance. And with that, thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.
Good for you.
Can you just speak a little bit to the depth and how far you'll be digging down and what kind of buffer there is between the water table and the aquifer?
Sure. So there's no one overall plan that shows all that because of the size of this site. But if we go to the first 100 plan here, for example. In general, the bottom of our proposed excavation is around elevation 160 to 165. You can see there's sort of light groundwater contours here. Part of the problem with this is there's a lot of information to convey on a single piece of paper. But so right here, for example, if our proposed bottom of excavation is 165, we've got a 161 groundwater contour here. If we go to the second plan here shows the current excavation area. And the hope is that somewhere in here is where that open water habitat and the constructed wetland habitat would be. We have yet to find suitable material at the water table elevation to create that habitat, so we've tried but haven't been successful yet. You can see groundwater contours in here, go from 159 to about 156. There is an area of water here where they're basically backfilling the excavation. They've gotten into the water table, it's being backfilled with silt and restored. Because there's nothing below the water table to excavate, so we can't create the habitat. But if you start looking to the westerly side of the site, if we're going down to 165, we've probably got groundwater anywhere from 10 to 12 feet below that with the greatest separation. We're probably closer to 5 feet separation toward the easterly end of the site. And again, this is all dependent on what's ultimately encountered there for material. Part of the way they restore the site and bring it back to a useful condition for reforestation or for grassland habitat is they'll actually take silt that gets washed out of the processed material, put it back on the bottom of the excavation and grade it out before they put the topsoil and organics back. So you have some sort of a medium below your organics that holds water and allows you to establish vegetation. So these are proposed grades, assuming the best material. If you get stuff with finer silt in it, these final grades are going to be significantly higher because they're forced to do something with that silt, and that's what happens when it goes back on the excavation and gets used in the restoration.
So am I correct, the details of that information is contained in the Army Corps Engineer report?
Yes.
Okay.
These
Which we
water-
were not provided before this meeting, and I have not had the opportunity to read,
Right.
which I would like to do.
Right, we actually provided a copy of the entire groundwater monitoring report that was done as well.
So I'm going to pause right now. If there's anyone in the audience now that would like to make an additional comment or question, I'm going to suggest to the commission that we continue this public hearing into next month to give us the opportunity to read the report, which will likely answer some of the questions I know that I have. Is there anyone in the audience who has comments or questions now? Please stand up, state your name.
Walter Sweeter, we're on 152 Sterling Hill Road, Chairman of the Plainfield Conservation Commission. I agree with that gentleman's comments on the groundwater and aquifer, all that information. Is this a for-profit only operation?
Yes.
So there's no give back to the town, the
There-
schools, or any kind of projects for the town?
The excavation obviously is done by a private entity for profit. If they didn't make a profit, they'd be out of business. As far as this property is concerned, there is a substantial benefit to the town and the public in general. Part of the Army Corps approval, as I mentioned, is long-term stewardship of this property after it's restored. O&G Industries and Strategic Commercial Realty are not in the long-term stewardship of restored lands business. Typically, they restore a site, it's reforested, it just stays in that natural condition. With some of the habitat that we want to create here, which would be grassland habitat, somewhere in the order of 50 to 100 acres, open water and wetland habitat that's going to require long-term monitoring to ensure its success, there has to be an appropriate entity to take over that work. And O&G Industries and Strategic Commercial Realty are committed and through the Army Corps permit are required to make that happen. So as I mentioned, in all likelihood, when the excavation is done, this entire 475-acre property will probably be turned over to a land trust or some other suitable organization that has the desire and the ability to do that. At which point the town and the public in general is getting the benefit, once again, of 475 acres of open space because it's permanently conserved and would never be developed for any other purpose. Well, I don't mean to.
All right, you finished with your comment.
That's an interesting concept. I've never heard that. Has that happened before in other towns?
I am not aware of anything, but again, we submitted the Army Corps permit with the application. You're certainly free to read through it and look at those details.
Now, do you consider this a large project, a huge project, as far as size?
I would and I would not. Again, it sounds massive. It's a 475-acre property. We're going to excavate 230-plus acres.
Right.
But again, it's happening over a 30-year period, plus or minus. You're not going to have 230 acres of open gravel excavation going on at once. You're probably going to have 15 to 20 acres of gravel excavation going on at once, and you're going to have restoration following right behind it. So by the time they're excavating Phase 7 out by Jackson Road, this area where they're digging right now is probably going to be a mature grassland habitat, a well-established wetland habitat, or a mature forest.
So, that being said, I'm just thinking that gravel operations are pretty lucrative, and you said that they would be out of business if they would have to give money or some kind of give back to the town?
I said they'd be out of business if they didn't make a profit like any other business.
Yeah, okay. All right, I just want to read something from our plan of conservation and development, 2008 to now, 2018, which is being revised right now, but just one quick thing here. Water quality goals, it's in our POCD. Preserve and protect the high quality of the town's surface and groundwater. Provide, improve the quality of degraded waters where feasible. Preserve, protect, and where feasible, increase the existing aquatic habitats, fisheries, and recreational resources. And the kicker here is prohibit new or increased high-risk activities that could adversely affect surface or groundwater resources. No residential, commercial, or industrial development shall take precedent over the protection of the town's water resources. It's in our POC.
Thank you.
Sue Hall, I'm also on the Conservation Commission. Your purpose over the years has been to protect our town. This project has gone on for, what'd you say, 15 years? 15 years of not really watching what has going on. We are giving our town away to other towns and making it roads and whatever, building. You say no road right now to go into Jackson Road. That will happen in the future. You're just saying today there will be no road. That road will happen. You keep trying to sell, the project's already going on, but you're selling it, well, 30 years from now, we're gonna have a habitat. Most of us will be dead 30 years from now. And private, well, really, you're right. All right, not everybody, of course not, but you keep saying that, but there's all these no trespassing signs, keep out, Ralston. If I tried to drive down that road off of Route 14 that says Ralston, you know, it's like a mile in before you can get down there, I, probably could be arrested. And you're saying, all this environmental, wonderful stuff, that's not happening now for the town. You're gonna dig all this up and take the town away. And that's been happening year after year in this part of Connecticut. How many jobs does this company give Plainfield residents? I don't know. And then the train, you say, oh, there's not gonna be any traffic. What about the train traffic? I live on Water Street. Some of these people live at Pickett Road. Some of them at Cemetery Road. They've been having trouble with the trains downtown blocking. So there could be more increased train traffic. You really have to. I mean, when was the last time? Probably Ryan and Lou went out recently to look at this. But he keeps saying, over the years, there have been people monitoring all this. Who in the town of Plainfield actually, from the board, went there? And were
Actually,
allowed
Sue, I
to
go there on a regular basis to look at what they're doing.
Well, that's good to know.
I do.
That's, because we don't have very many enforcement people in the town of Plainfield. We have one person to enforce ordinances in the whole town of Plainfield.
Actually, I don't enforce ordinances, I enforce zoning regulations.
Okay, well, okay. But, you're saying the Army Corps of Engineers and FEMA and all these people are looking out for us. They're not really looking out for Plainfield. You have to look out for Plainfield. And unfortunately, you have inherited this project over 15 years, and it's going to go on for 30 more. And there have been neighborhoods in the town that have been ruined over the years for the different projects. So please, listen to these people. Please. And we don't want it like the water. We don't want to lose our water and end up like in other states. So I'm glad that you are continuing to have the public come back. And is there anybody here from that company? Good. You've got to listen. I mean, if I wanted to go down, I saw your operation from Hopkins Hill only by taking a train trip this year. And you won't believe what's down at the bottom of Black Hill, their operation. Unbelievable. And then up on Hopkins Hill, and then you can see what's been destroyed in that area. Are you actually planting trees right now and grasslands down there that we can all walk down there? Then invite the public to see your area. A lot of people don't know what it looks like down there. We're not allowed all these years. So don't wait 30 years from now to make it a wonderful area for the town to enjoy. Do it now. You should be filling in now. So thank you for listening to me. And really, you've got this town has to start watching what's going on.
Thank you. Been waiting patiently.
Hi, my name is Paul Lucia. A few points that I want to make. I'm concerned with the health, the dust, the silt that he says is all over his property. That is harmful to older people and children and everybody else. And I just want to, are you aware of the health concerns that can happen with this project? Second of all, when you say you're going to fill in and create these wetlands, what are you going to fill it in with? Because right now there's gravel filtering the water, and you're going to fill it in with the same substance that has naturally, where you're taking the gravel out, you're going to put it back in?
When they take gravel out, there's fines in it, very fine sand, which is still highly permeable. It still filters the water like it does naturally, but it's not a marketable construction material. So what happens in the processing operation, that gets washed out and it's put back on the excavation site and graded off before they put back the topsoil and the organics. So yes, it will continue to provide that same filtering function.
Well, that seems like you're going backwards. Like, I mean, you're putting something finer in.
We're not adding anything into it, we're putting a portion of what's excavated back.
That you can't use.
Correct.
So you're pulling silt back in.
Yes.
And it is finer, so it's not the gravel
It's
that's
what's there now.
actually filtering the water.
It's what's there now, and that's actually what's providing the filtration of the water. If you dump water through crushed stone, you get no filtration whatsoever. It's the fines and the stratified drift deposits that actually provide the filtration. If you look at stormwater design criteria, most of the measures that are incorporated into low-impact development designs and stormwater treatment systems, there's some form or another of a sand filter. It's the fine sand that provides the water quality benefits, because that's what takes the harmful things, if they're already in the water, out, and adsorbs onto the sand and is treated through various means in the soil.
Okay, and when you say you're gonna build habitat wetlands, why don't you leave them alone and excavate around them?
We're not proposing to disturb any natural wetlands. We're leaving very large buffers around every natural wetland on this site. We're creating additional wetlands. That's the goal.
Is it a wise goal? Because additional wetlands produce mosquitoes, and right now, you know, you have things to control it. When you create other water features that aren't supposed to be there, what happens? I mean, is it gonna cause flooding? Is it gonna cause more problems than?
It may not give you any level of comfort, but you can rest assured that ONG Industries, when we were going through this permitting process, they were working with the foremost expert, but there is specific stuff in your regulations requiring it.
This would always be monitored, so
It would be monitored by the processing facility, which again is not part of this application, would be controlled by state regulations as well. With what's going on here, you've got 15 years of history. You've got 15 years of your staff going out and making sure things are being done properly. And I know from personal experience, working on this site in the past probably 5 years, they have upped their efforts to maintain low dust levels on their haul road. They have a water truck out there in the summer that operates pretty much continuously, spraying water on the haul road so that the trucks going back and forth coming from the excavation site don't kick up dust. So when there's a need for extra effort, they're putting forth the effort. And if they're not, you do have provisions in your regulations that they're required to abide by.
One more question.
Yep, and then the gentleman in the front, and then I saw a hand over there, so.
Okay, what is the noise level that this is going to produce?
The same noise level it produces right now.
What is the regulations for the noise level in this town? I'm sorry, I don't have any.
We don't have any noise regulations, we refer to the state DEP.
Anything above 70 decibels.
85 decibels over 8 hours.
Whatever the state says.
Okay.
You haven't answered my question. I asked you about property. Can you guarantee us that our property ain't gonna go down by a gravel bank being across the street? That our price on a house of what it's worth is gonna be worth that in 5, 10, or 15 years from now?
Sir, he did indicate that he's not a realtor, so he wouldn't be able to answer that question. However, there's a gentleman in the back who is indicating.
I'm not a realtor either.
Okay.
For the record, my name is Kenneth Ferrari. I'm employed with ONG Industries. I think last Friday was my 29th anniversary year with ONG. My exalted title, Director of Planning and Permits. I handle all permitting for the company, whether it's community rail operations, rock quarries, and what have you. I can honestly state that in my 29-plus years, it's now a couple of days, that this was probably the most comprehensive undertaking that we ever made in terms of making sure we understood what the resource base was. It is an extensive area. As David pointed out, it's slightly under 500 acres. The total area for excavation is less than half that. We didn't come in here to maximize the extractable reserves. We had to work, spent at least 7 years doing our homework, our due diligence, to satisfy the Army Corps, US EPA, Fish and Wildlife, DEEP, formerly DEP, and we never had to go to wetland because I believe your wetland regs have a 100-foot setback. We've offered, and the Corps graciously accepted, a 200-foot setback over both extensive quarters on the west and the east side of the property. There's Cedar Swamp and the water course there is at Sugarbrook. Yes. And on the east side, it's Horsebrook. So along those entire quarters, which total about 3,500 feet in length, we have a permanent buffer that is no disturbance within 200 feet of the wetland boundary. On top of that, any mining that approaches that boundary, the 200 foot, again, we can't go any further. Once the reserves are mined out, we will regrade the site, reclaim it with suitable ground cover, get some grasses established and so forth, and then we're obligated to put in a forested community. As Dave pointed out, we've also offered, when you get a chance to look at the Army Corps application, you'll see a lot of thought went into it in terms of providing diversity in landscape, form, and habitat. We've got forested communities, and we have at least 2 areas. Again, it's not carved in stone, no pun intended, but as we proceed with the excavation and determine whether or not we can go deeper and create both a deep water and shallow water habitat for a pond, if the reserves aren't there, we're not going to do it. But some areas, instead of going back to a forested community, will be a grassland community. And as Dave pointed out, all the regulatory agencies, whether it be Connecticut, anywhere in New England, New York State, and so forth, the grassland habitat areas are dwindling because of development, because of reverting to mature forests and so forth. So we said here was an opportunity for us to create some diversity in habitat form. So we've offered to create at least 2 40-acre tracts of grassland habitat. The exact boundaries, that's down the road. By the time you get to phase 7, they can spread my ashes there or wherever else my wife decides to do it. But that's a long way down the road. The beauty of this area, of this site, is I would call it, it's centrally isolated. There's so much buffer from east to west and north to south that unless you were flying over the area or had a drone or whatever, you wouldn't know that the excavation operation is taking place. I'm not talking about processing, I'm talking about the actual sand and gravel excavation from the ground. There will be always a minimum of 5-foot separation between the final grade and the water table. I mean, that's typically what we do. If you were building a subdivision of single-family homes, the health code requires for a septic, on-site septic system, I don't know if I got it in reverse, either 18 inches from water table. 18 inches, 1.5 feet with a septic system. There are no septic systems proposed for this site. The concerns regarding the aquifer and so forth, we are mining a natural resource. When we reclaim the site, we will be replacing it with a natural resource. The inherent materials, the fines that are washed out from the excavation will be placed back in there, along with some of the overburden, which is the subsoil and the topsoil coming from the ground down to where the sandy gravel deposit is. So it's only earth material that's getting placed back on site. So there's no source of pollution. Yes, can a hydraulic hose break? Yes, but that can happen on the thousands of miles of roadway that crisscross Plainfield and every other town in the state. And, you know, we've got equipment on site. If a hydraulic hose broke, we could scoop up that material, hold it in the bucket, put it in the truck, and safely control it and discard it appropriately. Let me just give you the original. As the owner, and then both the instant application and the abutting properties to the north, that was the letter. We're giving ourselves permission, yes, to connect to the excavation up to the property line. And that property that was formerly owned by Lorraine Young, that is a non-conforming gravel operation, if I'm not mistaken. It's pre-existing, so it predates zoning or whatever. When you get a chance to go through the permit, you'll see that a lot of thought went into it, and we worked as a team to develop a very comprehensive approach to this. We're protecting all the wetlands on it. We ended up having, again, it took 7 years. First, we had to identify the wetlands, flag them all, had to be surveyed by Provost and Rivero, and then we had wetland scientists go in there to monitor the species that were present, to make certain, because there were 2 species in particular that they were concerned about. The eastern spadefoot toad, which I guess is a popular creature in the Lowe's complex. So we hired Dr. Michael Clemens. I won't tell you what we paid him. It was exorbitant. It was incredibly expensive. Even when he drove from Salisbury, Connecticut, down to Plainfield, we had to pay him the same price if he was on the site or just driving in his car. But we were obligated to do it to demonstrate whether or not that species was present. I'm happy to report that species is not present on the property. And the other one was a blue spotted salamander. Those are the only 2 species. The blue spotted salamander does exist, but I think it's over closer to where the railroad tracks are, right? And that's the only area, but we've identified all the different species that were present there. And again, it was a concerted effort. It took over 7 years to do our homework, and at the same time, work with the Corps and all the other federal and state agencies to say, this is a plan that'll work for everybody. We get to take the resource out. We're not maximizing the amount of material that we can get out of there, but we recognize the resource base that exists and protect it to the greatest extent possible. And in answer to this gentleman's question regarding, will it impact the property values? I'm not an appraiser. I stopped at Holiday Inn Express once, so I'll offer my opinion. Again, since I've always handled all our permitting, and we have 5 rock quarries in the state of Connecticut. With quarries, you've got drilling and blasting and so forth, so that has far more outside impact than a sandy gravel operation would, because you don't have any blasting. And there's no truck traffic here that's leaving the road. It's all internal, as Dave pointed out, going to the processing plant across the railroad tracks. But we have done
my house.
Okay, well, we have done studies for quarry operations in the past. It hired a real estate appraiser, and there's been no impact from any of those types of operations on the surrounding area. So I feel very confident that we're not going to have any impact on real estate values in the area based upon previous studies that we've done that are more intensive in terms of the excavation operation itself because of what's involved. And then with respect to the aquifer, again, we're just mining a natural resource. There's no discharge of anything other than, again, if a hose breaks or something to that effect. And as Dave pointed out, there will be a natural filtering mechanism because of the fact that some areas, over half the area isn't even going to be disturbed. And then the areas that are disturbed will still end up with a fairly thick layer of natural material that can serve for filtering purposes when you're not even proposing any development. So I hope that helps. I had travel from Torrington, so I want to make sure I said something.
I suppose with regard to real estate value, you could look at it as a positive too in the long term. It'd be nice to own a house across the street from 500 acres of permanently conserved land that can never be developed. I realize that may not be a concern in our lifetimes, but.
And I had a hand over here and then front row over here.
For the record, Jeff Rawson, President Rawson Materials. I just wanted to speak to the comment that was made about us as a company not contributing to the community, because I think that's obviously very important. And certainly beyond the obvious of us paying substantial taxes in town, we support many local community organizations, be it the Little League. We supply equipment here every year for the Touch a Truck event. We donate significant funds for the toys program. We send company representatives in for the Schools to Career program here in Plainfield. So I think we do quite a bit for the community, and we're happy to do that. But I just wanted to speak to that point specifically. Thank you.
Hi, June Gagnon, Jackson Road. There was a study done at University Auburn in Ohio on the real estate values for homes next to a sand pit. And there was a 30% reduction in sale prices for properties adjacent to the pit. Other studies similarly suggested the value reduction can be 25% or higher. Local real estate agents have said gravel pits are a common deterrent for buyers and a worry for sellers. I know some representatives from O&G are here. It's one of the biggest construction companies in the country. They don't really need our sand. The residents here, the DEP and the Army Corps of Engineers, they don't live in our neighborhood. And I want to say to you, this man has said he's got dust and rocks on his vehicles. You're talking about buffers. What are you going to do for him? Right here, he's got dirty trucks. He's been dealing with it for how long?
Since I opened, many years ago.
15 years. What are you going to do for him? You're talking about buffers. You're talking about all these, and you know, you think it's funny. You think it's funny, but this is where we live. Sorry.
Any other comments? Yes, sorry.
First of all, my name's Mr. Cody. I lived here for 51 years. I bought that piece of property. It was nice and quiet, away from the city, and it didn't bother nobody, and I loved it. And I paid through the arm and a leg for it. All of a sudden now, I gotta give up my neighborhood. Because that guy wants to sell dirt to somebody in Pennsylvania and Long Island. The dirt's not going to us in Connecticut or in Plainfield. It's going down the street. Let's just use what we need. My well's 4 feet deep. What do you think is going to happen when he starts digging down the road for me? I'm only like maybe 400 yards, my well, from where he's going to dig. Now he says it don't hurt the water. Okay? His company surveyed my property. Surveyed his property for 2 years. And me and his surveyor went to a pond. Now when it flows in the wintertime, it's nice. In the middle of summer, it turns green. That's why they come down with the traps and everything to trap the frogs and stuff to check to see where they were. They were still there. But yet the water was okay. I wouldn't drink it. I wouldn't want nobody else to drink it either. And I figured if that's maybe 800 yards or 900 yards down the road, when they start digging on the other side of me now, that's over here. Now when they start going up to their yard, you might come across the road. To me, not across the road, to the thing. Now, you said you've got a piece of property, 500 acres there, right? 500 acres you're going to develop, right? All right. Now, show me here. 500 acres. Show me. I want to show you where I live. And I want to show you.
I actually know where you live. I'm the surveyor from that company.
Good. This is not the same. All right.
property. Here.
Right, close. All right, now, when you're gonna operate this is what you're gonna take out.
We'll need you to
Now,
speak a
you
little
survey
bit
the
louder,
wetlands
sir,
out
for the
there.
record, please.
What's that, man?
Just need you to speak a little louder so the record picks you up.
Now you know how we felt when all you guys were talking to you. When they came up and talked to you, we couldn't hear a damn word. We couldn't even hear your names.
Sir, if you would let me know, I'd happily tell everyone to
We
speak
should have a
louder.
PA system.
I understand.
But Lord, would you? That damn Paul Squeak, he should have never left. Anyhow, now, you're gonna operate this property, okay? I'm over here. There's wetlands in the middle. Okay, that wetlands, is that part of 500 acres?
A good portion of it is, yes.
Okay, now, what you, not gonna use in your proportion, did you turn that over to the state? Is that conservation land to the state? Did the state take that over now?
No.
You don't own that no more, do you?
Yes, ONG Industries owns it, I don't own it.
Your ONG still owns that?
Yes, absolutely.
You didn't give no land to the state for conservation?
We're required to provide a permanent conservation easement along that 200 feet off from the wetland boundary,
All right,
westerly from you. So you've got the 200 feet of upland area, and the entire wetland corridor obviously will never be developed anyway. So that serve as protection.
but you're telling me the state did not take that piece over? You still
Not
have title
to
for
be
all that?
simple, no, but there's gonna be, regardless of who owns the property down the line, there will be permanent protection of that corridor, both
Okay.
on the east side and the west side.
All right,
A
so,
permanent conservation easement, no development.
so you're gonna pay taxes on that still?
Well, probably reduced at some point because of the fact that it's wetland, just like any property owner that
Okay,
can
once
reduce
it turns over to
assessment.
conservation, nobody paid taxes on it, the state.
I'm sorry?
I thought once it went over to conservation, the state paid the taxes on it. You don't pay it no more.
No.
No?
That would be a different issue. It would depend who the owner was and.
Well, the state will never pay taxes on any property.
Yeah,
So they
once it's
have
turned
a
over to
program
conservation, it falls into
Right.
With
place.
an easement, taxes are reduced.
Okay.
So just so you understand, the way that conservation easement works, it's not a blanket thing that happens to the entire property at once. That follows with the excavation phasing, because obviously you have an easement over it, you can't dig it up. Once it's restored, once there's habitat established, once they do that work, they're going to have to identify with the Army Corps and Deep's approval, some entity that would take over the long-term stewardship of that.
Okay, and another thing you stated earlier, their hours are 8 to 5. ONG's hours are 8 to 5, they do all, they're 8 to 5.
No, I never stated that. I said that what we're proposing with this application is what was taken verbatim out of the zoning regulations, which is 7 o'clock to 7 o'clock, and I think 7 to 12 on, 7 to 12 on Saturdays and no Sunday or holidays.
In the summertime, it starts at 6:36, because that's my bedroom. I can hear them cracking rocks and banging down there at time in the morning. But I can live with that a little bit, that stuff like that. It's just that we got away from the cities. I come from 12 kids. I live 9 people in one room, right? I got out of that. I bought a place in Plainfield, nice and quiet. French neighborhood. Now what have I got? A bunch of trucks that go all over the world, dumping dirt, taking it from our place. We are giving our town away one truckload at a time. But you people can't see that. Because you live downtown, or you live in New Britain, or you live in Canada. Too many rocks over there, they don't want to dig over there. But we're giving it away, folks. Stick around, look and see. Look where we were 40 years ago. Look where we are now. We're cramming houses in wetland that country. We're not using our heads. Everybody's money hungry. Stop and look around, take care of your people. The people pay taxes. You don't take care of them, oh, you guys are gonna go home, one by one. That's not a threat either. Thank you.
Yes.
Hey, could you tell, where are you guys gonna dig first? Is it down in Mrs.,
Down in this area here is where they're operating right now. So
is that
from
Mrs.
there,
Bedard's? Is that Mrs. Bedard's, or Mrs. Young's,
no, that's way up at the other end here.
Okay.
This would be at the end of the operation.
One little thing, please.
Yep.
My name is Mr. Cody again. You know, when we talk about digging, oops, right? We're talking about putting the dirt back. All right? Why go so far? I got water within 4 feet, right? Instead of going out there and digging a hole, why don't you let them dig down to about 6 feet high and do it? And leave that 6 feet there. Now they don't gotta replace it. It's all good still, our water's still gonna be filtered. Don't let them go down 60 feet like that hole they got over there already. And it's been there for 10 years. So how long does it take to fill in 10 years? What, are you waiting for the dirt to grow? Thank you.
Is there anyone else in the audience with a comment or a question for the applicant?
I don't know, on this paper,
If you
where's
could
the
state your name for the
John
record.
Cruiser?
Thank you.
Where's the existing excavating right now? Where is that? Is that where you guys are digging now?
It's right here.
Yeah, but where is that?
In relation to what? Do you want me to show it to you on whatever?
In
Do you
relation-
have something on there?
You want me to show it? This is Jackson Road, you said, right? This is Jackson Road, what you said?
This is Jackson Road up here.
Okay, so
This
where's
is where
this?
they're operating right now.
Okay, that's all.
Yep.
Any other comments or questions from the audience? Okay, board members, I stand by my previous statement that I would like to review the Army Corps of Engineer report. Is there anyone else who agrees with that assessment? Okay.
One thing I would request is if there's additional information that you think we could provide in the upcoming month,
Let me know.
we'd be happy to do that.
Okay. I think once we read it, we can have a better understanding of questions, and we'll send those to Lou. So I'll entertain a motion to continue the public hearing to March. Do I have a second? All those in favor? Any opposed? Okay, public hearing is continued to March. So moving on to the regular meeting, so I'll call the regular meeting to order. And Lou, do we have any additions or corrections to the agenda? Thank you, sir. Thank you.